Hey Pajama Bosses, this is episode number 4 of Pajama Bosses TV, and today I have a very exciting video for you. Now, if you're somebody who's looking to scale your network marketing income this year, right now, then this video is going to be for you. I was thinking long and hard, what are some of the common traps that leaders fall into while they're trying to increase their income? Are you someone who wants to grow from 0 to 6 figures and 6 to 7 figures? Because if you are, this video is going to be for you. In today's video, I'm going to show you the 3 common traps that we all fall into as we're trying to scale our income. And by the way, hint, hint, the biggest misconception is that we try and scale our income. If we're trying to do it 10x, we're trying to work 10 times harder. And that's the last thing that we should be doing. So if you want to increase your income, come with me to the office. I'm going to look at the common traps so you can avoid them and scale your income fast. Let's go. Hey Pajama Bosses, welcome to our headquarters right here, and we're ready to talk about scaling from 6 to 7 figures and avoiding the common traps that you can fall into. Now, before we talk about scaling from 6 to 7 figures, I want to really talk to you a little bit about what happens before you get to 6 figures. Does that make sense? Because the scaling process from 0 to 6 figures is very different than going from 6 to 7 figures. And in today's video, I want to share with you the common traps that you will fall into when you go from 6 to 7 figures. However, if you're not at 6 figures yet, you really need to know the first few steps, how you can get there. Does that make sense? So you can successfully scale to 6 figures as well. So let's have a look at the differences between 0 to 6 and 6 to 7 figures scaling in network marketing. So let's have a look. So first of all, when you go from 0 to 6 figures per year, there is different types of activities and what you need to be focusing on as a leader. And when you get from 0 to 7 figures per year annually in network marketing, there has to be a different focus too. So let's have a look at those focuses and what you're actually doing. As you're going from 0 to 6 figures, the most important thing that you can do is get clarity. Clarity is so important. It's really all about personal disciplines. It actually impacts what you're going to be doing on a daily basis, and it directly helps you to create a daily method of operation. And if I cannot say enough about people starting in their network marketing businesses and doing too many things that are not going to give them results. So clarity and daily method of operation is super important. And of course, the very most important skill that we must master is recruiting. It's prospecting and recruiting. We must become master prospectors and master recruiters. And really, that is the single most important thing to accomplish as we're going from 0 to 6 figures. Obviously, recruiting and prospecting is a massive, it's not just one skill. There's massive amounts of things to learn. But as you're learning that, you will basically going together with personal disciplines, clarity, and daily method of operation, be very successful in scaling your business from 0 to 6 figures. There's really not more to that. However, when you're going from 6 to 7 figures, there's really 3 pillars that you must focus on, and that is making sure that things are running based on a system that you create. If you do not have a system, you've heard this from me 1,000 times. It's going to be challenging. What you may be experiencing, as you're nearing 6 figures, as your income is starting to go $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 per month, you'll be experiencing longer workload, longer work days. You'll be working very hard, but you won't see your income increase as you're increasing your workload. And that's why you need systems. You need to be focusing on creating leaders and communicating correctly with the leaders you have. There's a whole science in how we can easily and effectively communicate with 1,000 leaders in just 3 hours of time per week. So, if you don't already know that, that's going to be a crucial thing. The other thing also is making sure that you have a cadence of events that is present in your business, going from weekly events, whether that's online events, offline events, monthly events, quarterly events, yearly conventions. All of that cadence, the rhythm, and how you're promoting events is going to create momentum if you do it correctly. Now, all of these 3 things, however, come down to one thing only. You see, when you're going from 6 to 7 figures, the one challenge that we all have, we think it's about learning more and actually working harder. And it is all about learning more and working harder here, But as you get to 6 figures, it is more about this one word. It's more about who you are becoming as a person rather than what you're learning and how much harder you're working. Think about this. When you get to 6 figures, I'm sure you will agree, if you're not even at 6 figures right now, but I know that you will be full-time in your business, and I know that you're going to be working as hard as you can because you're committed, you want to get there as fast as possible. So let's say that you're working 8, 10, 12 hours a day sometimes. I know how hard leaders work at this level. So if you want to times 10 your income to go to 7 figures, it's not just about times 10 your effort. You can't just say, I'm going to work 10 times harder because there's not enough hours in the day. I'm going to push 10 times harder because you don't have 10 times more energy. So you need to start to leverage your efforts with systems, leaders, and events. And not only that, it's about who you are becoming more than what you're learning and how much harder you're working. Remember this, the common trap of leaders going from 6 to 7 figures, they think it's just about working harder and doing more of what they've been doing. And that's the one mistake that everyone falls into. And that is the reason that incomes plateau around the 6-figure annual mark. This is the one reason that a lot of teams disappear into, that status quo of not working hard enough, of not taking action. This is why people give up on themselves and actually quit on their business, or perhaps start to think about going to another company, which doesn't solve the problem either. And so let's now have a look at the common traps that you may be falling into as you're going from 6 to 7 figures, providing you understand these two processes are very different. Okay, so let's have a look now. Now, before I go into all this 6 to 7 figure stuff, I want to share with you really quickly, if you haven't already heard our story, Miguel and I, after a couple of years into our business, we're earning a solid multiple 6-figure income, somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000 a year. And, it was going up and down, and we were doing that. But that was happening over and over again. And 2 years into that kind of struggle, we were now traveling in Asia and actually building our businesses internationally in many countries. And we're working extremely hard, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, we're pushing as hard as we can. And one day, literally, we have both burnt out. It was within 7 days that we both ended up in a hospital bed. It was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We literally could not physically keep going. And that was an opportunity to ask a better question. It was a better question in terms of how should we be doing our business so that we don't continue to work harder. And guess what? So that we can actually scale our income. And so I don't want you to get to the stage where, first of all, you're burning out. And we all know that, sometimes we're so ambitious, so eager to do well in network marketing that sometimes that happens. But it's not just about avoiding the burnout. It's actually making sure that you are going to be successfully scaling a business, not just going through promotions in your business where, basically you have a big month because there's huge amounts of sales, but this is quickly followed up by a fall in your income, and you have to be rebuilding or anything like that. So if you're experiencing things like your team leaving to go to other companies, if you're experiencing things like you're working as hard as you can, but your income is not doubling and tripling, if you're looking at your business, but there's no real leaders popping up, there's no business builders, new business builders popping up, and a whole heap of customers, pay attention to these 6 to 7 figure traps. Okay. Now that you've heard our story, let's get to it. The first thing that you've heard me talk about is the difference in activities as you go from 0 to 6 to 6 to 7 figure scaling. So the first thing is, make sure your focus in income producing activities. So the income producing activities, right? I'm just going to put a P. Income producing activities is very different. As you're going from 6 to 7 figures, it's not just going to be, recruiting, presenting, closing. And while that is good, this is continuously going to change. I want to show you quickly this. You probably heard me refer to this before, the Pyjama Bosses duplication blueprint, where we divide network marketing profession into 8 income brackets. And in each income bracket, there is specifically defined income producing activities that are most effective, skills that you have to master, and so on. So obviously, as your income is increasing, as your team is growing, you're going to have to adjust what exactly you're doing to continue to scale your business effectively and stay actually effective in your role. So one thing that you have to remember, for example, just as you're crossing the 6-figure mark, the most income producing activities, for example, are presenting and closing in groups. Like, for example, online, offline, you could do events, be the presenter quite often, right? As you're at 6 figures, you're at the successful upline presenting. Also, when you're doing that, it could be also closing in groups. It could be going onto a big conference call or Zoom call and actually closing a presentation online. So it's about closing and it's about presenting in groups, right? Present all in groups. That's one income producing activity as you're passing the 6-figure mark. Now, it's quite interesting. As you continue to grow your income, as you go to 250,000 per year, 500,000 a year, 750,000 a year, this income producing activities continue to shift. Like, for example, later on, you're going to have to, focus on another recruiting activity, but it's actually about recruiting influencers, right? It's obviously not going to be continuously serving your team to continue sponsor a large amount of people, perhaps who don't have a lot of influence. As you grow your team, you're going to be involved specifically in growing leadership and helping leadership in your team to grow and recruit and present and close and all that. So while you're recruiting for yourself personally, you might want to focus on recruiting influencers. The other thing that is, continues to grow the importance as well as you're growing your team is working with your top 10 leadership. And there's specific ways how you can continuously work with them and be extremely effective. This is not about managing your team. This is still being within leadership and leading as a leader, but actually being really effective, how to work with your top 10 leadership. If you are really effective, the 1 hour a week that you work with them can be the most income producing hour of the whole week. At one point, Miguel and I systemized our business so much. We were earning, well over $30,000 per week. Yet what we were really continuously doing is working with our top 10 leadership. And that only meant 4 or 5 hours per week as we were working with different international markets. So this could be one of the most income producing activities that you can do at a certain income bracket. Certainly, if right now you're just starting out in your business, you don't even have a team, who are you going to work with? You have to actually create a team, get to 6 figures, and then you're able to do that. So does that make sense? Your focus is different on different income producing activities. The common trap people fall into as they cross 6 figures is they continue to focus on everything, as they continue to focus on personally recruiting hundreds of people, and that actually it actually backfires and continues to plateauing their income. It continues to frustrate you because you're seeing a large attrition and so on. Now, once you are, clear that you're going to be continuously focusing on different income producing activities as your income scales, if you're ready for the second thing, I'm going to write it up. Okay, so the second trap that people fall into is actually what I call not monitoring the ratio. So I'm just going to put ratio here. Ratio, and I'm going to explain, and sometimes I call this ratio the ratio that is going to change the world, and it's quite drastic, but I really think it's so massively important. So let me explain it, okay? What I call the ratio is actually the ratio of business builders in your team, okay, the number of business builders, and let me just pause here and explain how you can estimate the number of business builders. So for example, the number of people that come to a monthly training event typically equals to the number of business builders in your team. The number of people on a training Zoom or webinar is typically the number of business builders in your team. I mean, a customer doesn't really attend a business training if they're not interested in creating a part-time or a full-time income, right? It can also be, for example, the number of people that come to a yearly convention. That's a really good way to estimate. And if you have a duplication system in your team, it is the number of people who are actively using a duplication system. That is by far best way of estimating it. Now that you have a really good way of estimating the number of business builders in your team, let's just say this is 100 people, okay? Let's just say you have 100 people. And by the way, in the duplication blueprint, we also, for each income bracket, recommend the exact number of business builders that you have to have, because this can be really important as you start to scale. As you know, if you don't have a foundation, and leaders are like foundation, if you don't have a solid foundation, how are you going to build a skyscraper? So the ratio is the number of business builders divided by the number of monthly orders in your team. Okay? Now, monthly orders are all customer orders, every order coming from your team members, so any amount of order, okay? Whether that's a $50 order, $100 order, whatever that is, you simply want to count the number of orders. And that represents the number of people within your distribution, within your organization. Does that make sense? Now, just for the purpose of this example, let's say that you had 2,000 orders this month, this past month, in your team. Does that make sense? So, in this case, the ratio would be 5%. Can you see? 100 divided by 2,000 is 5%. Now, first of all, what is the significance of this ratio? The significance of this ratio is how strong is your organization within the leadership? How many business builders? How strongly are you continuously scaling the leadership as you're scaling the number of orders? You see, what happens quite often as you go from 6 to 7 figures is that, you're going through huge promotions, perhaps new product launches, and it's very easy to increase the revenue. It's very easy to increase the revenue. But if you're not paying attention to your ratio, and I'll explain how much the ratio needs to be in a second, if you're not paying attention to this, it could be that you're simply scaling the orders and therefore not scaling the leadership may be detrimental 3-6 months later into your business because there's nobody to properly support all those orders, all those customers. So typically, if you have a 5% plus ratio, if there's more than 5% of business builders in your team, that is a very healthy ratio. If you have more than 10%, that is extremely strong. What happens typically between 0 to 6 figures is that we will be closer to 10%, but when we go over 6 figures and continue to scale to 7, the 5% is extremely solid. So if you're under 5%, if you're right here, if you're under 5%, let's say you only had 50 business builders attend a convention, but you had 2,000 orders, that basically means to me that you're very good at generating customers, but that also means that the business builders, people that are actually doing the business with you, are very busy, they're overworked, they're not using enough systems, and most possibly within the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to see a large dropout. That is going to mean the revenue is going to go down, your income is going to go down, and you're not going to be successfully scaling your business. So pay attention, no matter what your income is, you want your ratio to be right around 5%, up to 10%. This is extremely solid, but up to 10% is extremely good. And remember, as you're going from 6 to 7 figures, no matter what it is, every single month, monitor that ratio, calculate that ratio, estimate it to your best possible ability so that you know and you can predict the future. You know what is going to happen in your business. If you don't know what your ratio is, it's almost like driving blind. Yes, you're putting volume into your business, but actually, it may not duplicate because you don't have enough people to actually serve the existing revenue. You don't actually have enough leadership to build the existing layers within your team. So really important, if you don't have enough business builders, if you don't have a solid, healthy ratio, think about the systems, right, that we talked about. Think about events, cadence that we talked about, and leadership communication. How do we communicate with these leaders? And we can do another video on communicating with leadership, being effective, how to stay in touch, how to drive your business simply by communicating with leaders. Make sense? So remember, the common trap is that as we're going from 6 to 7 figures, the revenue shoots up very quickly, but if it's not properly supported within this ratio, staying very close between 5 to 10%, what may happen is that you're really not scaling, but you're just putting in orders. You're just selling. And as we all know, we're not in network marketing to create a sales job for anyone, not for ourselves, not for our team. So it's really important to monitor this ratio continuously. Make sense? Now let's go to number 3. The third trap that we very commonly fall into as we're scaling the business from 6 to 7 figures is not really understanding what personal needs. What are our personal needs, okay, our personal needs that will allow us to accomplish this scale. Because one thing is, the strategy, which is, the systems, the events, the leadership, the communication, all of those things, that is strategy. What about on a personal side? What about on the mindset and performance side? Because we all know sometimes this is responsible for 90% of all of our results. If we don't have the right mindset and performance, often we can't implement the strategy that we know we shouldn't be implementing. So, it's quite interesting, as you cross 6 figures, these personal needs change completely. As you go from 0 to 6 figures, we talked about discipline, right? We talked about how important it is to have personal discipline, personal daily routine. So daily routine, right? Daily routines, daily DMOs, personal, morning and evening routines, all of these things is extremely important. But as you get to 6 figures and above, what happens is that this personal performance and mindset focus shifts really more into the health, wellness, mindfulness, okay? So it shifts into health. And this is actually nothing to do whether you're actually in the health and wellness industry distributing health and wellness products or not. So I'm certainly hoping that you're on a journey of health and wellness, mindfulness, fitness, and actually creating that. But even if you're not putting a huge focus onto it from 0 to 6 figures, right? A lot of us don't do that because, quite honestly, life gets complicated. When we start network marketing, it's usually part-time. We have another activity, whether it's taking care of the family, working full-time, having another business, whatever that is, right? So by actually starting a network marketing business, our life gets really complex for a little while before we're able to go full-time. And in that time, quite often, some of the health, wellness, personal disciplines around, mindfulness and all the health is failing a little bit. Certainly have been on my side. The good thing is to be aware that this is only temporary. I'm not saying you should be eating really badly and never exercising, but sometimes you're giving up a little bit of time on that side to be able to push forward, to get to freedom, to be able to do this business full time. Does that make sense? Just a little brackets. On a personal note, I really believe in life we can have it all. However, sometimes we can't have it all at the same time. Okay? Sometimes there is small sacrifices and in time to be able to push a part of our life forwards a little bit, but sometimes that's at the detriment, not complete detriment. I'm not advising you to completely throw away your health and wellness while you're building to 6 figures, but certainly sometimes that suffers a bit. However, as you get from 6 to 7 figures, that's no longer an option. This is now your full-time job, because remember, it's all about who you are becoming. It's all about who you're becoming. And unless you're able to create an environment for yourself that really supports and empowers your health and wellness and really creates an environment for you where you're lowering the pressure and noise, you will not be able to scale your business from 6 to 7. So one of the common traps for network marketing leaders, I see 7 figures all the time overworking, not having daily routines that actually protect their pressure and noise and lower it. So it's really very important that you understand that. The other thing that is really important as you're starting to really cross into multiple 6 figures and going to 7 is to start outsourcing your personal and your business life, okay? What does that mean? That means that, and this is a controversial topic a little bit in network marketing, we say we're in business, for ourselves, not by ourselves, but we don't typically employ anyone. It's all, leading by example, working with our teams. But I honestly believe as you're crossing the $500,000 mark, $750,000 per year, this is where you need to start outsourcing some of your personal and business life. Having a personal assistant, perhaps having a chef come into your home, perhaps having a personal trainer, and actually having all areas of your life outsourced so that the one focus that you're creating is having enough energy and motivation to be able to show up in your business. See, the reason a lot of people do not accomplish this big scale from 6 to 7 is not because they don't know how to do it. It's not about strategy. They have the strategy and they even know what they need to do, but they're not doing this. They're not accomplishing the personal needs that it requires for you to go from 6 to 7 figures. And one thing is to start outsourcing things. Perhaps hire somebody who cleans and actually does all of your housework. How much would that free you up? What is the actual, have you ever calculated? What is the actual hourly rate that you're working on when you're earning $1 million a year? Does that make sense? If you're working 8 hours a week, 8 hours a day, and that's, 5 days a week, actually, that is almost $400, $500, $600, depending multiple 6 figures, 7 figures. $3,000 a day is the daily rate of a 7-figure earner. So, if you know this is happening, you need to start outsourcing to protect health and wellness so that you can have that you're turning up to your business and you're able to give the energy to your team, to yourself, to be able to build it. So those are some of the common traps. So, let's just summarize. The first one was that we need to shift focus. As we're going through different income brackets, the income producing activities are shifting so that we can actually serve our business and our team in the best possible way. Not only that, the ratio, remember the 5 to 10% of business builders, I write it down here, business builders, to orders every single month. If you're not looking at the ratio, it's like not wanting to know the future of your business. You have to track the numbers. And in the future videos, I'm going to do the exact analysis of all the numbers that you need to be tracking on a monthly basis as a leader to be able to predict the future. And finally, number 3, a common trap is that we are not putting in the personal needs first and focusing more on who we are becoming, focusing health and wellness, and outsourcing our personal and business life so we can have the energy and lower the pressure and noise. So, Pyjama Bosses, if you're serious about scaling your business from 0 to 6 figures or 6 to 7 figures, there is limited chances and opportunities to work with us personally. And there is a link right below this video. If you want to actually apply to work with us personally, go ahead right now. Schedule a time to talk to us. Depending on the time that you're watching this video, we may either have a full schedule, perhaps have an opportunity for 1 or 2 people to schedule in the next few days. But if you do find a spot open in our schedule, we are excited to talk to you about scaling from 0 to 6 or from 6 to 7 figures without falling into the common traps, working with you on all of this, on events, systems, leadership, all of the things that I've talked about. If you have found this video very, very useful and you found that you got a lot of value, then please go ahead and share it with your team and colleagues so that they too can avoid these common traps and successfully scale their business. In the meantime, I'm excited. If you want me to continue making these videos, put some comments below this video and say, this is awesome, tag your friends, and I'm excited to see you again next week.